It is amazing how quickly things can change in this space, and that is what we're going to spend a good chunk of today talking about. Now, to get you caught up, all sorts of stuff went down yesterday in which Sam Bankman-Fried of FTX said that they had come to an agreement with CZ of Binance for Binance to acquire FTX.com pending due diligence on the part of Binance. Now, according to a source today, Binance is leaning against getting this deal done. They took a look under the hood, and it's not looking good, according to a source talking to CoinDesk's Ian Allison. This is a highly fluid situation, something that has captured the markets and mainstream attention as FTX and Binance inch toward a possible takeover. There's so much to go into on this one. Really crazy stuff has been going on in the trading world in the past 48 to 72 hours. But here we are now on the cusp of a possible deal. But then again, maybe not. I'm going to throw this to Wendy for her initial thoughts on this whole Binance FTX thing, which has just gone crazy and so quick. What's up?
So there is definitely a lot to talk about here. There's a lot to break down. I want to come in with this from a business perspective. Business perspective means the LOI, the intent to purchase FTX or to acquire, to save them, is just an intent. It doesn't mean that it's actually going to happen. A lot of people are complaining, especially on Twitter, saying that Binance kind of started this whole thing by fudding FTT, et cetera. But realistically, that might not be the actual case. CZ did put a memo out, a statement out indicating what kind of happened. We don't know the exact story because we're not internally. One thing I will say from a business perspective, it might not make sense after they do their due diligence process to actually acquire FTX. Another thing that's very important to note is FTX US and FTX Official or FTX International are completely two different companies. Right now, FTX US is safe to use. However, people should still consider getting their cryptocurrency off of the exchange. I did that yesterday and my NFTs. From a business perspective, it doesn't really make sense if the hole is too big. But at the same time, if Binance doesn't come in and save the day, how will this impact crypto regulatory wise on a global scale? I have a lot of people in my audience, when we talk about global regulations, they say it's not going to impact the rest of the world, and vice versa. Whatever the SEC does is not going to impact the rest of the world, which in fact it definitely could. These people, these public servants, they all talk together about what to do with crypto. Crypto right now is essentially ungovernable, and they're going to need to come up with some type of regulation, with some type of control to establish a CBDC. So we will just kind of have to wait and see as to what happens with this entire debacle.
Yeah, we're getting some fresh reporting out of Bloomberg this morning that U.S. Regulators are indeed looking into FTX in the wake of this announced news from Binance. I'm going to toss it to Jen for her thoughts on this and other developments.
Yeah, I have so many thoughts. The first one I want to say is that I just want to give a shout out to journalism. You know, journalists are meant to hold companies, organizations, people, the leaders in our communities accountable. And this story started to unfold after a report by CoinDesk last week by Ian Allison. And I just want to say that journalists are doing their job and it's important. And we will come out of this on top. And I think that this was needed for that transparency that we talk about so much in this industry. So I want to just shout out Ian Allison. You know, the concerns about Alameda Research's balance sheet came from that report, and we're just starting to see it unravel now. My second thought is we often tell people on this show, it's said across the industry, do your own research. And I have to say, for someone who's doing their own research, they're just getting into crypto, a doxed founder and CEO who seems to be working with regulators, who has these big endorsements, who has commitments to charity, leads to credibility. And I feel for the people who did their own research, invested in the FTT token, put their money on FTX, because I don't think that there was something that you could have found that would have steered you in a different direction. I think this is a reminder of the industry that we're in. It's still very, very volatile. There's still a lot of uncertainty when it comes to regulation. We will get there eventually. And I just feel for the retail investors and the customers who are going to feel the effects of this. Zach?
Yeah, it's just really wild. If FTX wasn't an institution, like a pillar of the crypto economy, it was certainly something that was seen to be pretty solid. So for this to sort of materialize over the course of 48 to 24 hours, in which questions were asked about potential irregularities on the Alameda balance sheet, how that possibly impacted FTX, its sister company, and then for someone in the market here to exercise action against some of this information that had entered the space, and now for that to sort of accelerate into what sort of looks like a hostile takeover by Binance, acquiring a key competitor in FTX.com. It's going to be interesting to see if this ultimately materializes. But again, we're hearing reports that potentially Binance is shying away from the deal after doing a bit of that preliminary due diligence. We will see if this comes to pass. If not, I think there might be some really interesting questions as to what follows. If there's no one who's there to backstop FTX in this instance, then what? And I think the markets more broadly are sort of puking on the possibility of further ramifications of another major collapse within the crypto space. Wendy, tossing it to you. Saw your hand up. Curious for your thoughts.
One of the things I will say, it was a little bit of a red flag to see the kind of interaction between Alameda and FTX, because that is their trading desk. And it's also interesting to see a lot of the different tokens and things that they're in. And one thing that I do want to talk about, we talk about transparency a lot in crypto. We have the tools, we have the resources to put a lot of these transactions to the public, to show them what type of reserves are being held. And that's something that CZ mentioned, is that we're going to start showing proof of reserves. BingX, which is a crypto exchange that I am partnered with, full disclosure, they've also put that out, is that they are going to start showing proof of reserves. And I think it's important that all crypto exchanges that we use, if these exchanges do not have proof of reserves that they're posting and being very transparent about, you just shouldn't use it. So I think that even though this is an absolute terrible thing, it's a tragedy, there is a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel here, that we can expect a lot of self-regulation to come out of this with these crypto exchanges and say, hey, we're going to go ahead and show the proof of reserves. And if you can go through that and analyze that and it makes sense to you and you want to use that exchange, great. But if exchange does not have proof of reserves, especially after this entire debacle, it's probably one that you may not want to use.
I was just going to say, I think like the silver lining here potentially is that maybe more people move to DeFi, on-chain things that provide on-chain transparency, as opposed to what we keep seeing time and time again, that a lot of these CeFi institutions are black boxes in terms of what risk is being taken unbeknownst to you as a user of that exchange. So I think the silver lining, dare I say the hopium that may be surging across the space, is that this pushes us more toward on-chain activity in the trading space, pushes us more toward DeFi and that dream of intermediary lists transactions online. That's what crypto was all about. But I will say that most people interact with the space through intermediaries such as Coinbase, FTX, Binance, etc. I think this is a major black eye for the space going forward. But again, that little silver lining might be that the case for on-chain transparency that DeFi can offer, that might be the silver lining, but I wouldn't hold my breath on that just yet. Jen.
Yeah, to Wendy's point, I know there was a CoinDesk article this morning that said I think 9 exchanges are scrambling to put together these proof of reserve reports. The fact that they're scrambling is a little bit concerning, right? I like that they've been pushed into action. I think that we can most definitely expect regulators to be on top of this. I wouldn't be surprised if we see regulation or at least a draft of regulation coming out that requires centralized exchanges, especially in the US, that are registered to have these proof of reserves. I think it was 2 days ago when SBF tweeted, "Our assets are fine, everything is fine. These are just rumors that are being circulated by our competitors." I brought up a tweet on this show by, I think it was Zach Woll, that said, there is maybe one exchange that publicly publishes proof of reserves, and it would be so great if there was an industry standard so that people could make these informed decisions. I think that we are going to see it become an industry standard before the next bull cycle. Zach, I'll give it to you for last thoughts on this before we move on.
It is wild to see the steady lads vibe tweet has come to rear its ugly head yet again. We see it time and time again, projections of strength that ultimately signal the potential downfall of former giants in the space.